Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Durban and Cape Town. We are linking in with our Durban manager and our Cape Town manager, who've also got visitors in Cape Town and Durban. SASDA has been doing trade and investment work with the Department of Trade and Industry in the form of Trade Export South Africa for the last 16 years. And I will give you a presentation on what we've done, some hints on doing business in Africa, and the business opportunities we've identified so far. But in June last year, Minister Rob Davies, launched a new way of doing business in the African continent called Trade Investment Africa. I think it's a baby that's very, very close to Minister Davies' heart. And we've been in touch with this, but it's something that the members are really not very aware of. Now, my colleague here, Kwanda Medise, has just moved to Trade Invest Africa. She's been with the Department of Trade and Industry in various forms since 2014, and she's now responsible for stakeholder management and research at Trade Investment Africa. And she's going to give you an introduction to what Trade Investment Africa is, as opposed to Trade Export South Africa, which I'll give you information of. Kwanda, thanks so much for joining us. You have to stand behind here so Durban and Cape Town can see you. But I told John he didn't have to adjust the height over the screen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much to sassda for hosting the DTI today. Today I'm here to introduce you to a new division within the DTI called Trade Invest Africa. Scrolling down. Try to scroll down. This specific division really was a strategic response by our government to address the issues of trade and investment, our trade and investment activities and strategy with the rest of the African continent. The government recognized that we could scale up and be more focused in how we approach our engagements with our economic development engagements with the African continent, because in previous divisions we had a more generic approach. Minister Davies recognized the need to have a more structured, focused approach. So TIA was then launched last year in July as a response to that specific observation. The strategic objective of TIA, which distinguishes itself from Trade and Investment South Africa, is that it aims to address the issue of the trade imbalance between South Africa and its trading partners, which has never really informed our export promotion activities. We always aimed to push our products onto the continent without considering the fact that for our private sector to thrive, it's important for our African partners as well to also export their products to South Africa. So we aim to increase the level of intra-Africa trade to the levels, hopefully, that have been observed in Europe, in the Americas, and in Asia. Another strategic objective aims to address or scale up the levels of industrialization. We see a lot of our African partners, country partners, developing their own industrial policies in recognition of the fact that having a commodity-based economic strategy is not sustainable. So we are sharing with them through our various government platforms, interventions and capacity development initiatives that would scale up their levels of industrialization for the benefit of not only our private sector, establishing business linkages with our African partners, but also for their private sector as well to export to us. And then finally is to really address the infrastructure deficit on the continent. I think we are all familiar with the infrastructure requirements on the continent. We need a lot of financial resources earmarked to a very important infrastructure projects that have been packaged on the continent. We don't have the required resources. We don't have the required project implementation capabilities. So TIA aims to lobby our development partners, our DFIs, as well as international partners that we have that have got the financial resources earmarked for specific infrastructure projects on the continent. So in summary, really our strategic approach, which is really our mandate, is to pursue an outward investment-led trade strategy. So through our investment promotion initiatives, we hope to unlock further export opportunities for you as our private sector, but also export opportunities for our African partner countries. So this approach really rests on three very important pillars, and Minister Davies always speaks to these when he's talking about our industrial policy, and this is really lobbying our private sector as well as our international donors to invest in infrastructure development on the continent, facilitating industrial development that will facilitate an integration of our value chains between our African trading partners and South African private sector, as well as facilitating market integration between us and the rest of the continent. I'll unpack each of these in the next two slides. Around market integration, this speaks obviously to issues around tariffs and non-tariff barriers. These are addressed directly through bilateral engagements that we have with government-to-government bilateral engagements that we have regularly with our African trading partners. On your behalf as the private sector, you raise those specific issues with us. We've got regional desks that would address your specific tariff and non-tariff barriers, and we would table those through specific government channels that are meant to unlock those, harmonizing trade facilitation policies such as your standards and customs procedures. Infrastructure development, I've spoken to this before, but we are really prioritizing those specific infrastructure projects that are cross-border, that would facilitate regional integration. We speak regional integration in our industrial policy because we believe that regional integration would stimulate more intra-Africa trade.
I'm just going to move this thing out. It's getting in the way.
Oh, okay. Oh, the Angie thing.
Yeah, let me move it to the bottom right. Sorry about that. There you go. Okay, thanks.
And around infrastructure development, there are four priority sectors. Although our focus is not exclusive to these sectors, we've aligned with the priority sectors of the DBSA because we use the DBSA in a lot of our investment promotion work around infrastructure. And obviously, these are also the four priority sectors that have been identified by the African Development Bank. So we've noticed a lot of the projects that come out of our bilateral engagements between governments are classified in these key four sectors. However, it doesn't mean that if there's an important infrastructure project that would be of benefit to you that falls outside of these sectors, we wouldn't consider assisting you with. So if there's a tourism infrastructure project that you're interested in, we would also be able to assist you on that as well. And then lastly, our last pillar is the issue of industrial development, looking at facilitating investments into strategic manufacturing sectors where there are projects that facilitate business linkages between the South African private sector as well as our African trading partners. Okay. So our value proposition, you might think that maybe this is not unique, it's very similar to TESA, but our value proposition, as I mentioned before, is that we're purely focused on the African continent, and our networks and resources are tailor-made and customized to address your needs for the rest of the continent. So we've been positioned to be the go-to unit for you as our private sector looking for trade and investment opportunities across various African markets. We also assist companies that are already invested in various countries that might be facing challenges. We've assisted 2 or 3 that were in the press, but I can't disclose their names here. But if you're facing a specific challenge and you've invested or you're already exporting to a specific market, through our network across the continent, we would be able to be of assistance to you. I've mentioned that we've got partnerships on the continent as well as with international funders as well that aim to assist you gain market access, increase our exports, and also our focus is really on encouraging value-added exports through our investment drive on the continent. It's not to say that if it's your basic exports, we wouldn't be of assistance, but through these initiatives of focusing on infrastructure development and addressing specific non-tariff barriers, we want to encourage more value-added exports between us and the rest of the continent. Okay. So our offerings are really classified in these three broad categories. The first one being access to capital. And here we're talking about our partnerships with our DFIs. We've got the ECIC that we have here. We go on a lot of missions with the ECIC on specific projects that need to be underwritten by the ECIC. The DBSA and the IDC are part of our investment and trade promotion initiatives. And we also work with the World Bank. We've recently assumed partnership of a new fund called the African Development Partnership within the World Bank, looking at infrastructure projects on the continent. And through our investment in that specific partnership, we hope to facilitate your access onto the continent. So through ECIC, we're talking insurance financing. We have our own suite of incentives at the DTI that I'm sure you're familiar with. Yes. Okay. And the infrastructure industrial funding element is really linking into your DBSAs, your IDCs, and our partnership with the World Bank. Access to markets. Similarly to TESA, we've got we have our trade and investment missions to various markets. However, these are usually, unlike TESA, which is more generic and quite broad, cuts across various sectors. Ours are very focused on infrastructure and tailor-made to the needs of a specific African market. Through our government-to-government engagements, we address your non-tariff barriers that you may be faced with.
For those of you in Cape Town and Durban, I have a mailing list where all my information into Africa goes to members who are interested. If you'd like to be on that mailing list, please tell Angie and Michelle, and they will let me know. Okay, just to start, we've been doing business with the DTI into Africa from 17 years ago when they started Trade Export South Africa. It's a business and government partnership. It's worked very effectively and it's developed wonderfully over the years. Okay. It's not going down. We've got gremlins tonight.
You can always go there.
Okay. It's working now. Great. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we have Trade Export South Africa, which has been going for 17 years, and Trade Invest Africa, which has been going since last year. Obviously, TESA falls under the Department of Trade and Industry, and as I've mentioned, about 17 years old. There are approximately 30 industry associations, joint action groups, and export councils that actually work with TESA on a regular basis. We all have master files with the Department of Trade and Industry, so when we apply for funding or we apply for anything to do with them, our tax certificate's there, our memorandum of intent, everything's there. An individual would have to resubmit all of that tax clearance. We don't. We're a recognized partner to the DTI. The DTI offerings which we generally use are the OSM, the Outward Selling Mission, the Inward Selling Mission, which we've used on occasion, and the National Pavilions. The funding offerings generally fall into two categories. The sector-specific assistance scheme. Here you would apply, if you were going out into Africa and you wanted to do brochures in a generic language for that particular country, you could apply under SAS. You can apply for research under SAS. You can apply for marketing material under SAS, and a whole portfolio of things. EMEA, the Export Marketing and Investment Assistance Scheme, pays for travel when we go on national pavilions or we go on outward selling missions. The national pavilions generally are when the DTI go into a specific country, for example, Zambia, and they book a space at a pavilion. The last one we did was in Kitwe in Zambia, which is the Copperbelt National Pavilion. Then they invite those stakeholders within TESA to participate in this with them. We then assess whether it's a good opportunity for us, and if it is, we will then send out an email to members inviting them to join us. On the outward selling missions and the inward selling missions, generally they are project related. For example, the last OSM I did was into Mozambique, and it was very much linked to the Liquid National Gas project up in Pemba and Palma. And the DTI will only then invite those councils to participate who they believe would be of benefit to that particular project. So we get an invitation from the DTI. We send it out to the members. We need a minimum of 3 members in order to participate with the DTI in a national pavilion. And what we then require from those members is what we call a letter of representation, which is basically a letter saying, I'm a member of sassda and I nominate sassda to represent me at this particular national pavilion. And then we need some sort of electronic piece of marketing material. Having received that, we will then send all of that as an application to the Department of Trade and Industry. And once it's been accepted, and I will tell you we've never been rejected, ever, in 3 years, then we will tell you that we're going to let you know when we need your marketing material, which is usually 30 to 40 brochures. It's also nice to have something that stands up. I have a company that I represent quite often called SA Hardwares, who do stainless steel door handles. And they've made a big stand for me with the door handles. And nobody can walk past our stand without actually doing that. And that sort of thing attracts people to the stand. The Department of Trade and Industry decide on the dates of delivery to the logistics company, which is always in Pretoria, and then I will notify the members. And any leads or inquiries we get from that national pavilion, we will send first to those members who've asked us to represent them. If there's none of the members who we've represented who can supply that service or product, we will then go to the greater membership. After 6 months, we're required to do feedback to the DTI, and I will pester all the members to give me that feedback because they need to measure the efficacy of that national pavilion for future investment. And I always say to the members, it's a very cheap way of testing a new market. All it's costing you basically is your marketing material. They pay for our flight, they pay for our accommodation, they pay for the marketing material to be sent there, the display material, the stand. So it virtually costs you nothing. And anyone can apply. You don't have to just wait for sassda to apply. Any one of you could apply. As Rajan knows, his company has applied. But it then becomes subject to certain rules and regulations, which the DTI will determine themselves. So not everybody is successful. Okay, on the outward selling missions, and I say we've only done one inward selling mission ever, and that was in 2002. The outward selling missions, we assess the opportunities for the members up front. If it's a good project, we think there's good stainless steel opportunities, we will accept. We will only we then look at the membership as a whole, because we've gone there to represent all of you. So if I have a request, for example, for a particular service, I will then go onto our database, see which of the members are listed under providers of that service. I will send all of the names to the client, and I'll let all the members know which client I've sent your names to. As you know, it says that we don't get involved in commercial issues, so we leave that to you and the client, but we will give you all of those leads. Again, we need to give feedback after 6 months to the DTI so they can evaluate the project we've just done, and anybody, again, can apply. Okay, what have we done? We'll start off with FASIM in Mozambique. And I'll say to you, some have been good and some have been bad, but if you don't try them, you don't know. FASIM was not good. FASIM is a Rand Easter show. We did it once. It was really not a business-to-business forum, and we have not done it again. Zimbabwe, a wonderful, wonderful show. Very well organized. We got the best stand in the organization. Wonderful interest. Unfortunately, no money. So we've stopped going to Zimbabwe because there is just no capital outflow coming here, and we're running the risk of endangering business for our members. Zambia, we've done that National Pavilion 2014, 15, 16, and 17. It is copper belt, it is mining, it is agriculture, all of which are stainless. It works for us. We did it this May again, and we'll continue to do it. And if anybody would like to get involved in the future, let us know. We've had various members come on the stand with us. If you ask us to represent you, it doesn't mean you can't come with us. You can come with us, only you pay your own costs. The DTI will only pay for one person. Okay, Tet in Maputo. The first picture there is crossing the Zambezi in Tet. I've never realized the river could be that wide. It was an excellent mission. It was the first time we visited Mozambique with regard to the liquid natural gas plant. And as you'll see in my notes later, don't go into Africa thinking you're going to get an opportunity like that. It doesn't work. It's building relationships. It's going back time after time. And this was our first venture into Maputo. Zimbabwe, as I said, we got the best stand, but we're not doing that anymore. Tanzania was another one that didn't work for us. It was not a business-to-business situation. And in fact, I was in Tanzania 2 weeks ago, and we visited the fair. It's very much like the one that happens in the Free State. If you want to buy a pig, it's a very good fair. But in fact, the DTI have now stopped supporting it completely. It was no return on investment. Dakar, Senegal. Talking about Trade Invest Africa, which Kwanda was talking about, what you'll find going into Africa, many of the projects in terms of infrastructure are water and sanitation, food and beverage processing, abattoirs, all of which are stainless, and all of which, as we proceed, will come our way. These are things that are lacking within Africa and things that we're working towards in these regions. Pemba, Maputo in 2016, we again went back to the liquid natural gas plant. Nothing had happened last year. We were a bit disappointed, but we met all the key people and we carried on. Arusha and Dar es Salaam was in 2016 as well. First time we'd been to Tanzania. Country that needs a lot of development, and again, agro-processing. It's a big factor there. This goes to this year. And we did Abidjan and San Pedro. The purpose of this visit was, the first picture is of the port in Abidjan, which is absolutely chaotic. It takes you 14 days to get a ship into the port of Abidjan just to offload. And you've got to understand that's perishables. The second picture is of the port of Pemba, which at the moment only has one docking facility. But it is a gateway into the rest of the surrounding landlocked countries like Mali and Guinea, who have very, very big manganese, iron ore reserves. There's a railway plan that goes through to the port of Pemba. And this was really a development look at the port, infrastructure into the port. There's going to be a petrochemical terminal and a gas terminal. Stainless steel's there. Obviously, there's housing required, hotels required, stainless steel going into that too. And the very nice thing is we were waiting for a deal to be signed with the Ivorian government, and the shipping line MSC signed on the 28th of May. So this project will now go ahead. This year, Maputo and Pemba. The first picture is of us all in conference. We do a lot of business-to-business meetings there to meet key individuals. And then the second one is actually the port of Pemba, which is also again one berth. There are two big parties involved in this project. One is ENI, the Italian company, who will do the offshore development. And then there's Anadarko, who will do the onshore development. ENI signed a deal of commitment with the Mozambican government on the 1st of June, which means the ancillary port in Pemba will start now. We know the key contacts there. My colleague here from Global Roofing knows, well, he's got a colleague in Pemba, which I'm in touch with on a regular basis. And this will now move ahead from the seaside. The onshore side, which is Anadarko, will probably take another 18 months, I would say. The issue there is that they've got to move current residents off the land they wish to expropriate, and that's what's taking the time. But I've had assurances it will happen. Business in Mozambique. Again, the LNG port in Pemba Palma, north of Mozambique. Offshore was signed by ENI. Onshore project is Anadarko. It will happen. Ancillary projects. There are only 2 hotels in Pemba. One is a tiny little place on the seaside with little cottages, and the other is the Pemba Beach Hotel, where we stayed. But there will be more development in hotels, infrastructure, housing, hospitals. The support port in Pemba, which is being done by INEOS, which is a Nigerian consortium with the Chinese. They say they've got a 5-year plan for a 5-month plan, I beg your pardon, for doing that. We've been checking this for 3 years. When I say nothing happened last year, this year, they've cleared the land. They're reclaiming the dock area. There's infrastructure going in there as we speak. So this is moving. And the other project we came across was the one in Tet. Baobab Resources, who we met in Tet 2 years ago, had been employed actually to do a bit of a recce in Tet to see what mineral resources were there. They found large reserves of iron ore, which they were going to export through Beira. With the sort of changes in prices of primary commodities and what have you, they had a relook, found a huge source of vanadium, which is a very valuable product, and they are now looking to commence building a full-on steel plant in January, and the substructure will be a vanadium processing plant, which will involve a lot of stainless. Dar es Salaam. So Nairobi first, which was actually 3 weeks ago. The first picture is, again, our B2B meetings. The second one is we now have on board, as members of sassda, the 2 biggest fabricators in Nairobi, Desbro and ASL. Their fabrication is mainly thin gauge, dairy type stuff. So there are opportunities for joint ventures and partnerships with our current members, and that's to be borne in mind. Dar es Salaam, there's the traffic in Dar, which is horrendous. And then a beautiful picture from the Hyatt Hotel in Dar es Salaam. These 2 visits with the DTI were very good. We met a lot of good people. You'll see it in my report. It's a new market visit for us. It's the first time we've been in there seriously. And I can see it very much as an agro-processing type environment, moving into the abattoirs and water and sanitation. Just to touch on the French-speaking countries, which my friend Mbia knows all about. He's in charge of the French-speaking countries for the ECIC, and he himself is from DRC. 22 French-speaking countries in Africa representing about 200 million people. Only 8% of South Africans' exports actually goes into these countries, and most of those go into the DRC, and it's predominantly mining orientators, our heavy fabricators. A thing to be borne in mind is that from 2010 to 2016, our exports doubled to Francophone Africa. But these countries have their own legal system, and you must be aware of that. It's very different from our legal system. They have their own monetary system, which is linked to the French franc, which is very different from us too. And so I've been advised by our experienced members in this market that when doing business here, you must try and make sure in your contract that you defer to South African law. Otherwise, you could end up with a lot of French legal wrangling, which you may not understand, and it might be not your legal infrastructure. In terms of Africa in general, protocol is a very, very big thing in Africa. There's always a great deal of pomp and ceremony. You might think that, oh gosh, are we doing this again? But don't. This is very, very important, and you've got to respect it. The dress code is very important. You must always look businesslike and dress smartly. Business cards, very, very important. Never run out of business cards on a business trip, please. Always have ample and take extra with you. It's good to have good brochures and marketing material, and if you can, have them in the language of the country you're in. Our export brochures are available in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. And if you need to translate your current marketing material, there is an avenue through the Department of Trade and Industry which will fund this for you. Just approach me if you need anything like that. Another thing, always, always contact our embassy or high commission before you go into a country and during your visit. Firstly, it's a courtesy. Secondly, you will get full support, and I know from our embassy or high commission, you'll be amazed how they support our businesses when we're out in Africa. And thirdly, if you get into a problem, you've got a support structure behind you. If you do have a contract, as I've said, try and make sure SA law applies and that there's a guarantee from the parent company. We've had several members be burnt in Mozambique, thinking that a company was an international company. But if an international company goes into Mozambique, they register a Mozambican company. And therefore, the international company is not liable if things go wrong. And people just don't realize that because you're new to this sort of business. Local content is very, very important when you go into African countries. And this is another thing our embassies can help you with. Facilitate introductions to the right partners, joint ventures. Make sure they're credible. Very, very helpful with this sort of thing. And don't expect, as I say, a quick fix. Business in Africa is a relationship building exercise. And you need to actually be in there. ECIC, now I'm deferring now to Mbia. I hope I've got this right. Okay. Mbia, ECIC was established in 2001, according to the Investment Insurance Act of 1957. And it's really a political and commercial insurance tool to help South African exporters of capital goods and related services. It is owned by the state. It is a DTI-owned entity. It's self-sustained, and they're a registered financial service provider. They have a vision of being a medium and long-term export credit investment insurance business, focusing on project finance, underwriting, consumer needs, and prudent portfolio and risk management. Okay. They provide political and commercial risk insurance for transactions denominated in US dollars and SA Rand. The political causes of loss include breach of contract, expropriation, change of law, transfer restriction, war and civil disturbance, protected default, breach of sovereign financial obligations. To give you an example, there is a consortium, including SASDA, currently looking at a business venture in the Côte d'Ivoire. As I mentioned, Mbia was with us. Now, you've probably heard in the news there's been a bit of a ruckus from the army in the Côte d'Ivoire who did not get paid, and there's been a bit of political uncertainty. Some people in the consortium are nervous of this, but the ECIC are prepared to back us from a political risk, which is very important. Commercial causes of loss include insolvency and protected default. So corporate or project finance transaction cover can be provided directly by the buyer, and this involves the South African registered bank as financier, or to the manufacturer exporter on a supply credit basis where the exporter offers credit terms to the foreign buyer which you are negotiating and transacting with. The ECIC will provide 100% political risk cover and between 85 and 100% commercial risk insurance for a minimum credit period of 2 years. The borrower is also required to provide a minimum down payment of 15%. And I hope I got that right, Mbia. We can proceed to any questions for myself or Kwanda or Mbia.
ECIC give the premium on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the project profile. Okay, how long the credit is advanced for? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? It depends on that. It depends on the transaction itself. Cannot say straight away how much it is. But it's a tiny fraction of the risk that you incur on the project. Yeah. When ECIC is on board, even the bank actually allow at risk because we replace the risk of the host country with the risk of South African government because we are a state-owned entity. So by taking our cover, we are facing the South African risk rather than the host country. Okay, the 15% I think maybe refer to the South African content. For ECIC to support any transaction, we require that the credit that will be advanced, we want that 50% of that be spent on South African capital good and service. Okay, so if the project is outside Africa, then 70% content. If it's Africa, at least it's 50% South Africa and 10% host country or another African country. So in that case, it means if the bank or yourself using your balance sheet or the bank advances a credit to a buyer, we want that money to come back to South Africa. In fact, that money will flow from the bank to the exporter. So we need 50% of that to be spent in South Africa.
That's not a down payment.
No, the down payment. The down payment is 15% from the buyer, the deposit. Once you put that, then you can now draw on the facility after put down the 15% now. So the South-African content for us just to push job creation and employment in South Africa. We don't want to get that money going buy stuff from outside. We want things that manufactured here in South Africa.
Anybody else? Do you want to ask anyone for the region?
Yeah.
Louise has got one and Taffy. And then we'll go to the regions.
I just want to say, Les, if you could just then summarize in terms of the top sectors across Africa, like the top 3, that you feel present the most potential in terms of stainless steel. I know you've mentioned a couple there. I just want to be clear. I know you said to me agro-processing, but can we just go over those again? Because there seems to be a lot going on.
There is. I would say, look, mining's still there, but much, much lower than it ever was. So you're generally talking food and beverage processing, agro-processing, water and sanitation. I would say they're the top 3 at the moment. And then probably following after that would be the hospitality and catering industry. We were actually talking about it earlier, and Côte d'Ivoire has potential, but I think the big one at the moment that's brewing is Mozambique.
Can also add that Senegal.
Senegal, yeah.
Senegal is very good because of their fishery. It's not they've got a lot of fishes, and all the country, it's like 60% of the post sits in Dakar, but the hinterland, there is no fishing there. So we have got now developing a cold chain program. So we want to build this cold storage facility, and to have also those frigorific truck that will take the fish from the coast into the hinterland.
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity really for stainless.
You had a question.
Just hold on, I think Angie's got...
So, Leslie. Yeah. We have a question here down here in Durban as well. From DMR and Steel, wanting to know how many open projects are there in Africa at the moment?
Sorry, not being facetious, but I don't have my crystal ball with me at the moment. There are a lot, but I couldn't quantify it. I'd have to do some desk research to actually give you the answer to that question.
Okay, thanks, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. It's Tulwana here.
Hi, love. How are you doing?
Hi. I just want to find out how exactly can we get kind of the timetable for the national pavilions and the outward selling missions as well from the DTI. How do we get those directly from them instead of going through you?
Okay, when we had our briefing in October last year, as we do on a quarterly basis with DTI, we were promised the missions by the end of the year and the national pavilions by the end of January. Unfortunately, what happened due to cost cutting, neither happened. Well, it happened. We got the missions by the end of December, and by the end of January, they'd all been changed. We got the national pavilions as they allocated them, and that's been cost cutting. So you can go onto their website and go onto their website regularly, and they will post as and when they decide to go ahead with a project. Other than that, if I get the listing this year, I'll send it to you, or we will send out as we're firstly notified, and they have to give us 3 months in advance.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Pleasure.
Leslie, thank you for a good presentation. The crowd on my side is either well informed or stunned. No questions.
Thanks, Michelle.
Right, yeah, sure they
Thanks,
can.
Cape
So I was
Town.
just asking, comparable, like for the same unit of risk or for the same risk profile, how comparable would you be to commercial banks? Because I know there are some commercial banks that offer export credit. So that's the first one. And then to Gwanda, we have a member under the CEPSA fold who wanted to export into Malawi, and this is wheelbarrows, so type of gardening equipment, and there was a 25% tariff despite the SADC agreement. Is that something that the TIA could assist with in trying to resolve, I guess?
Sorry, before Ambia commits himself, I'd just like to introduce Taffy as the chief economist for CEPSA, so be careful.
Thank you very much. I'm coming from an engineering background, so my explanation is really down to earth. It's not really a lot of but okay. Thank you very much. I would say that ACIC has been seen always as the insurer of last resort. So it means when it is very difficult for other private institutions to go to the country, what are called the exotic country, where the risk is very high, they will give you a very high premium. Whereas as ECIC, this is our core business. We are doing political risk. That is our core business. So I assume that we are very competitive to us. In fact, what we don't know is that they're taking the insurance from us because they're our client. Our ultimate client is the banks. It's not the exporter. The exporter will become our client when the client using his balance sheet extend the credit to the client. But how it works normally, client will come through the bank and will insure the bank. And the bank will actually pass now the premium to the exporter. So our ultimate client are the banks. But now we've changed. We don't want before use just to sit and wait when the bank see that the risk is becoming too high, then they come to ECIC. But now we want to push export much, so we're coming down that we see me here. I want to tell you, ECIC is there. Don't shy away to go to a country because this will happen, if that will happen, ECIC is there. ECIC will take that on you. Should anything happen, ECIC will pay a bigger portion of it, depending which percentage you take. Political risk, 100%. Commercial risk, between 85 and 95%. ECIC will cover that.
Ambeer's details are on the presentation there. Sorry. Ambeer's details are on the presentation there, but I'm sure you've got some business cards with him.
Used to cover only South African institutions. But now, since October last year, the minister have extended our mandate. We can underwrite any other bank from any part of the world. So you can get your money from wherever you want, but provided that the South African content is met. So that money must be used to buy from South Africa. And then ECIC can underwrite the project. So this is a very big opportunity. We want you to go out there, and especially myself, I'm looking after Francophone Africa. I want you to move. It's 22 countries, big market, and we are just Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Benin, all those countries, huge opportunity. And they don't know about South Africa. They just close to Europe, they're going to Europe, but they're not aware of the good thing that's happening here. Maybe all the news is just blah, blah, but there's good things to see if you are here. When they come down, they are quite shocked. It's like Europe. This guy, I'm working with a guy from Senegal now who's come down, who's going for the fishing program, going to Cape Town to buy those trucks. They're very, very, very impressed with what we're doing here. So we have just to market yourself, transport the material, go in there. If you want some help, you can come with me. I can assist you with translation, English, French. So don't shy away from French, because lots of companies stay away because it's French, but the Chinese are always very doing with French.
Thanks, Ambeer. For Durban and Cape Town, I will send Ambeer's details and his presentation, which he sent me, to Angie and Michelle to forward to you. Kwanda, do you want to come and answer the question on wheelbarrows? Into the blue light.
Blue light. Yes, we would be able to assist with that specific tariff issue. There are two ways of assisting. You can send it directly to me. I can redirect you to the specific regional desk. Companies, industries are able to submit a list of issues through our regional desks, which would be addressed through a NEDLAC forum. Now, that would be like an industry approach to a suite of issues. But then if there's an individual company or individual facing a specific tariff issue, that will be dealt with outside of the NEDLAC process, which tends to be much faster. But under contact, I can link you up, and then I can make sure that you do get a response. I think my contact details are at the end of my presentation. I'm sorry, I don't have business cards yet. Oh, my contact detail, okay.
No problem. I'll send them to everybody who signed the register.
Okay. K Modise at the DTI.
I'll send you all Kwanda's details. Any questions from Durban? Angie?
No, we good. We've just had people saying that they want a copy of this presentation, and then they want you to show the business card on the screen.
The business card for Ambeer? For Kwanda. Look, I'll send them both to you, both Ambeer's and Kwanda's, and then I'll send you the presentation as well, Angie.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, Tulwana here again.
No problem, Tulwana.
You sent us a list of high commissioners in, I think it was Africa and a bit of Europe and South America. Do you have an updated one for Africa?
If I don't, it should be on their website, but if it's not, I can always request one from Pindile.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'll check for you tomorrow. Cool. Thanks very much, everybody, and good night, Durban and Cape Town.